Hello children, now you are watching the third video of the chapter website concepts, and now it's time to discuss about your static and dynamic web page, a particular concept about which most of you had doubt in the last section. Remember when I discussed this in our when we just like that we discussed in our last chapter, it is internet and www. Many asked this, and I had cleared the doubts too, but still this comes a separate section over here, so we need to have a discussion on this properly with a much more better perspective about the same. And then the last one, that is web server. So let's see. Okay, you have your, this is the last section we were with, a static web page and a dynamic web page. I hope some of you remember that very clearly. A static, that word itself is giving the meaning of a static web page. They are web pages written with simple languages. We call it as client-side scripting language. HTML, client-side scripting language. Okay, HTML, JavaScript, cascading style sheet, that is CSS. Now, I remember what I told to certain people who asked it out. I told web page, a static web page is a page which will not be interactive in nature. So, when a server receives a request for a static web page, that means you typed in your web browser one name of a website which is of a static kind. So, what happens? The server sends a response to the client without doing any additional purpose. That is, it just checks out with the DNS, and these web pages are directly taken from your web server to the web browser as these were designed. There is no change. Pages will remain the same until someone changes it manually, meaning if any changes has to be made in a static web page, who has to change? The web designer should change. Understood? That means for whole 1 year, or for whole 6 months, or for whole any time till the designer changes it, your static remains pages or static web page remains to be the same throughout. Now, no matter how many clients uses it, no matter how many clients watches it. So the main thing about a static web pages, it's going to be the same till the creator changes it. Until someone should be understood as a creator. All right, so there is no specific any kind of changes. No database required. Web browser sends a request to web server. Web server finds a request, analyzes the request, sends a web page back to the web browser. Matter is over. Example I told, a page which displays about the different tourist places in Kerala. Nothing else. So what will be there? Say you have a 16 beautiful places in Kerala. Those 16 beautiful places, picture and description will be displayed in that web page. Throughout it will be the same. Yes or no? Yes. Whereas in a dynamic web page, what is happening? That has an interaction with the server itself. So we call the different languages which creates a dynamic web page as server-side scripting language. The other one was client-side scripting language. HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Here we have JSP, ASP, .NET, PHP. Okay, it's not PHP, it's PHP. It is preprocessor, hypertext preprocessor, Python. All these are languages with which you can create dynamic web pages. Now, what is a dynamic web page? As I told to certain people, it interacts with the user. The contents of the pages varies as per the requirement of the visitor. Alright, that means if you log into any website, then our name is displayed similarly. If another person logs in the same site, his name will be displayed. You know how number of examples of such sites, your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter, everywhere you have been identified as a separate data under the database. So your name and your other profile contents are stored there. So whenever you request to log in into such, not log in I can say, to load such a web page, anyway the home page will be the same, but after that if you wanted to go to any specific pages, you need to have an interactive session with the web page. That is, you need to enter your name and your password. Or to put it in a simple way, make my trip. You can view a lot of hotels, compare the rooms, different varieties of charges, etc. After that, if you really wanted to have a business with that page, you need to have a login. Correct. Now you need to at least give your informations over there. So what is a dynamic web page? A dynamic web page is a web page where an interactive where an interaction is being there with the user and the web page. A customized interaction has been there with your user and the web page. So once again, dynamic web pages are written in languages such as JSP, ASP, .NET and PHP. In dynamic web pages, the contents of the page varies as per the requirements of its visitor. The example we already saw. It takes more time to load than static web page. Definitely, you need a lot of other things over there. A database has to come. Okay, dynamic web pages are used where the information is changed frequently. For example, stock, prices, weather information, etc. So again, here also, how does it work? A HTTP request. A request is sent from the web server. Sorry, a web browser to the web server, and then the web server interact with the database. After you check with the login, it checks whether such a person with such an ID and a password is already been stored in the database. So when the server says scripting, that is been checked, and then if it is there, only then the page is being loaded with the second page to the user. So in a best way, it is given here as difference between your static and dynamic. So here pages will remain same until someone changes it manually. Where static web page. Dynamic customized according to the different visitors, or contents of pages are different for different visitors. Static web pages are written in what kind of language is that? Client-side language called as HTML, JavaScript, cascading style sheet. Okay. Then dynamic web pages are written in languages such as CGI, Ajax, ASP, ASP.NET, Python, JSP, etc., etc. We call such languages as server-side scripting language. Okay, static web page, easy to design. Dynamic web page, you need to learn the language much more thoroughly. Information changes very rarely in static web page. In dynamic web page, your information changes frequently. Less time for loading, more time for loading in dynamic web page. And database is not at all used in static, whereas in dynamic web page, a database is required. Alright, and now we are going to see what is a web server. Now you all know what is a web server, correct? Now what is a web server? It is nothing but a computer where the web content is stored. That is where your web page is designed and loaded by www. That is your web server. Basically, web server is used to host the website and deliver the resources requested through web browser. Like Amazon has a web server because every day lakhs of users are using it, correct? Facebook definitely has a web server. Maybe not one web server because you know the kind of people interacting with it. Your Instagram. Everything is having one or more web server. It is a different set of computer which deals with the different categories of requests of different users. In more technical term, it's a program that uses hypertext transfer protocol for serving files that create web pages for users in response to their requests that are sent by HTTP clients. That is quite difficult to understand, isn't it? Nothing. What they are saying is there is a software in one of the computer where what you have been searching, such a domain name is there, then using the protocol called as hypertext transfer protocol, the particular web page is identified and sent back to that particular web browser. That same thing, okay? So you don't have to study like that. You can just say the way I told you. Features of a web server. It's secure. It should be secure. No hacking, stacking, and it should be there. Fast. Be able to mitigate bandwidth congestion means if the bandwidth is if you don't have a very good bandwidth connection, still some of the important web page should be able to load. So it should be able to adjust with this bandwidth condition. Always it should be responsive if it is a dynamic web page. Should support most of the server-side scripting language. It is the program with which you are working here. If it is not identified by the web server, then it will be difficult. So if you design a web page and you put it in a server, that server should understand that particular web page programming. The design language. Okay, the language with which a website was designed. Easy user interface and virtual hosting. You don't have to sit in a place and do that. It will be automatically managed by the virtual server. So that's it. Features of a web server. Now comes functions of a web server. The same thing in a different style. So I don't have to discuss a lot of the functions and features are somewhat same. See, you can go through it and identify it. Stores and secures website data, provides web database, serves the end user request. Who's the end user? The one which is using the particular website. Same thing. Examples that you need to just keep it in your mind. Apache web server, one of its kind. Okay. IIS, Internet Information Services. GINGS 2002, Apache Tomcat, Light HTTPD. Okay, these are the examples of a web server where websites are being stored, or the programs using which, or the software using which the computer loads and stores your websites. What is web hosting? The last part of this bit. The last part of this. Web hosting is a place where all the files of your website live. That is nothing but that same place. That is your web server. It is like a home of our website. A good way to think about this is if the domain name is the address of a house, then web hosting is the actual house that address is pointing to. All websites on the internet needs web hosting. So somebody should be there to launch the website. Domain name and web hosting are two different services. This domain name system, remember the one which converts your domain name to IP address. They're two different, but they work together to make your website launching easy. Okay. Now, what are the what are the main types of web hosting? With this, actually, this chapter is also getting completed. Web hosting can be done with shared multiple domains, it is multiple different servers. Then using virtual private server hosting. It can be your main server split into the multiple virtual servers. Then a completely dedicated machine is there to control everything about your website. It is called dedicated hosting. In a cloud hosting, it's a virtual server again. Cloud hosting plans come with multiple remote servers. Each server has different responsibility. If one of the server is compromised or has a problem, the other server will take up the responsibilities. So it's happening in the virtual world. Okay, reseller hosting and WordPress. That is, you can even do that with the help of other people. That is, you live in a house of rent. So this is the kind of web hosting. So web hosting is nothing but how you launch your website. So I hope you have understood this. If at all web hosting, if you have not understood properly, you don't have to worry because I'll be explaining that once again when we meet in the Google Meet. So go through it carefully and understand the different concepts of web server. So thank you. We are going to put a stop to this chapter because the chapter is going to be concluded.